Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Armen Babajanian with the World Affairs Council. Thank you for tuning in on this very special day. And we have a great program, some wonderful guests, including one coming in directly from France. And I look forward to having a vibrant discussion about Bastille Day. But before we do that, I want to introduce the president of the board of directors of Alliance Française of San Antonio, Charles Matt. And we appreciate Alliance Française for putting this together. Elena has been helpful to put this together, and we appreciate everyone's participation and the partnership with Alliance Française. This webinar is sponsored by the University of Incarnate Word. Thank you to our board member, Julie, for making that happen. So President Matt, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Armand, and welcome everyone to this really unusual celebration of Bastille Day this year. It's one like no other, and we're just pleased that you've elected to join us for this panel discussion and for the other activities that we have planned for this special day. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Alliance Française, the organization is devoted to friendship between people who are interested in France, interested in the French language and culture, and those of us here in San Antonio. We offer classes. We do anticipate offering classes through Zoom this fall. We offer cultural activities, dinners, etc., etc. So we welcome you to become part of the Alliance Française. It's open to anyone. You don't have to speak French to be a member. There will be a link to our website on the chat box for this discussion. And it will have information about some of the other activities that we have planned for this year's Bastille Day. I'd like to thank Armand and the World Affairs Council for partnering with us to make this discussion possible. And I'd certainly like to thank each and every one of you who will be on this panel. Each of you have contributed in such special ways to the success of the Alliance Française. We thank you for your friendship. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here today. And with that, I'm going to cut out and leave it to all of you good French people to talk about Bastille Day. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Thank you, President Charles Matt, Board of Directors of Alliance Française in San Antonio, Texas. So appreciate them approaching us for this wonderful opportunity to talk about a very important day for the French people and a lot of French Americans. Everyone in New Orleans too, right? I understand that New Orleans celebrates in a lot of different French communities. I want to briefly introduce the panel, but I want to give more time so that we hear from them. Their biographies are also in the chat link. If you click on there and on the Alliance Française website, you will see their more extensive biographies. We're very pleased to have the Honorary Consul General of France here, representing Houston, Alexis Andres. He is the Consul General of France based out of Houston. He's been there since 2017 and has served in embassies in many parts of the world, including Hanoi, Berlin, and Algiers. So we welcome Consul General Andres. We have Francois, oh, I'm sorry?
I just said merci.
Very good. And we also have Francois d'Alençon. He's the senior foreign correspondent for La Croix in France. He's joining us from Paris, France. He has been the foreign news editor. He's also been a product of the JFK School of Government. He's got several books also, and they are listed in that link. Isabel Hall, she is joining us from Lubbock today, but she's a French professor at the University of Texas, San Antonio, and in the Department of Modern Language and Literature. She's born in France. She was born in France and also speaks German, and has a master's in technology, cinema, and Francophone literature and culture. It's very impressive. And welcome, Isabel, Professor Hall. Gwen Sessions is joining us by phone. We had some video difficulty with her, so she is on phone with us. She is a French teacher for Alliance Française San Antonio, and she has a master's degree in French language, and we are pleased to also be joined by her via phone. Thank you all so much for joining us. Of course, this will air tomorrow on Bastille Day, so as viewers are watching, you are watching a recorded session in celebration of this momentous day. I want to start with the General Consul, how things are going with you and your staff and your colleagues before we jump into what the significance of Bastille Day is.
Thank you, Armand. And thanks for this great invitation to the Alliance Française, to the World Affairs Council. You know how much I love visiting San Antonio, and I did this, by the way, beginning of February for the very interesting competition organized by the Alliance Française. Thanks for asking news about the staff, because indeed for the last 3 months, as all of you, we've been very impacted by the COVID crisis. And I would say, first of all, we're all in good health, and I hope it's the same for you and people listening to us. We've had to adapt, so we've reformatted our teams. At one point, we were all in teleworking. Then we, mid-May, we started again having some people working by shifts at the office. And due to the worsening of the crisis, now we only have one staff at the office and the others are teleworking. What is very impressive, and I think has been the case all over the world where people had to adapt, is that all my team has been able to switch from one day to the other, nearly, to new modes of working, of helping our compatriots, of showing our solidarity with you all. So, as said, we're all safe, healthy. That's the main point, and we are really all together in this crisis.
Thank you so much, Consul General Andres. Mr. Delanson, can you tell us a little bit about what's happening in Paris? I know you all have been affected more recently, 170,000 cases, 30,000 deaths. What's the situation there? Has it quieted down a little bit?
Yes, quite a lot, because, I mean, the lockdown is over since more than a month. So the situation is pretty normal, I would say, in terms of COVID-19, except that if you hear a couple of voices, the specialists, people in charge of watching, you know, the statistics in terms of contamination, they are saying that there is a slight increase of the rate of contamination, and there are some clusters across the country, but so far it's not very threatening, especially that I think the whole sanitary system is in place. I mean, they are more ready today than they were 3 months ago, of course. We have a lot of more testing, a lot more equipment in the hospital. So the key question is if there will be a so-called second wave, let's say by October. That's the big question. So far, so good.
Great, great, thank you. And Professor Hall and Gwen Sessions, you teach at UTSA, and
Yes.
then Gwen, if you could also just tell us how the world looks to you right now from your perspective.
Well, from my perspective, since the spring break in March, we have, transferred everything virtually. So we finished our classes from our spring semester online, and we had about an extra week to adapt and prepare everything, and it went very well. We were all very worried because for most of us, it was the first time online, and being used to teaching face-to-face, it was an interesting change. But the students reacted, I would say, for the majority of the students, everybody reacted really well, and we adapted very well, and we finished well. I was able to teach a class during summer one that I just finished last week, and we did very well also virtually. I was very pleased to know that most of my students were not touched by COVID, directly or personally, and with their close families. So that was a blessing for all of them. And we are preparing for the fall. There's a lot of questions still. Trying to prepare all the different facets of possibilities, either face-to-face for smaller classes or completely online. So we're all preparing for different possibilities to be able to just tackle anything we need to do. And we know, though, because we were just talking about second wave in October in France, we were talking about even if we are face-to-face in August, after Thanksgiving break, we will not be coming back to campus, and we will finish the semester online again. So going from the end of November, December, and then probably until the end of January. So yeah, a lot of questions and a lot of possibilities, and we're all just on our toes, but we're learning a lot, growing a lot, and the students are, very well adapting to the situation. So it's been good.
Great.
That's yes.
Thank you. Gwen, how about you?
Yeah, well, I teach in a public school at the high school level, and things are a little bit different for me. We also went in complete distant learning after spring break, and we finished the year that way. And it was more challenging than, I would say, teaching students, older students at the university level. I deal with students who are 14, 15 to 18 years old. Traditionally, and talking to all my colleagues, French teachers here in San Antonio, we're all facing the same issues, a lot of technology issues, students who had a lot of challenges, actually. Participation was, for all kind of reason, not where it should be. So I think we took a lot of time to reflect and start to be ready for the school year. And we have a lot of questions. At this point, it is not known if we are going to be teaching face-to-face or if we're going to be in a distance learning mode again, or maybe a hybrid combination, partly online, partly in class. At this time, it is not known. But we're trying to prepare the best to adapt as well.
Thank you so much, Gwen. Thank you so much. All right, now we're going to jump into the reason why we're having this program, celebration of Bastille Day. Maybe we start with the Consul General, a little bit of what Bastille Day is about and what it means to each of you. Maybe we go in the same order that you all answered about the significance of Bastille Day.
Yeah, thank you. If you refer to history, Bastille Day refers to the 14th of July, 1789, when the people of Paris, I will make a very complex story very short. So took over the Bastille, and it was the beginning of the French Revolution. Just as an anecdote, in the Bastille, there were only 7 inmates, including 4 forgers. So it was not the prison with thousands of political opponents, just as an anecdote. this date became the National Day of the French Republic only in 1880, because of course the revolution started in 1789, but the French Republic became stable only a long time after this. But when it was decided in 1880, it was at that time the Third Republic. And there was some debates. There were other dates that could have been chosen as a national day, but Bastille Day was chosen because it was really the day when the people of Paris, and so the French people, took over its destiny in hand and started, as said, the French Revolution. Since then, the 14th of July is the day when we celebrate our shared values of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and that's why it's a key date. And today, I think we'll go into more details about how we'll celebrate this very special year. Let me just mention that this 14th of July also has a universal symbol. The values that were defended by the people of Paris at that time were also the same values that initiated the American Revolution, and that since then have also initiated many other movements where people fight for universal rights.
Thank you for that. Mr. D'Alençon?
Yes, it will be a bit subdued as a celebration tomorrow in France. Usually it's a big day for everywhere, in every city, every little city, every village. You have a ceremony, you have a band, you have in the evening, you have firecrackers, you have balls, etc. This year, because of COVID-19, I guess the mood will be a bit subdued and slightly different.
Thank you. Professor Hall?
Yes, well, Bastille Day for me has always been, you know, the feeling of freedom and the thankfulness for the strength and the desire and the determination of the people of the 1789 to go and fight for freedom and equality of the people. And it has always been a time for me, as being the daughter of a man who had fought during World War II, has always been a time of pondering and thankfulness for everything that men have done and women have done in history for the freedom that we enjoy today. And we've talked about the parades in Paris, the big military parade that is happening traditionally. And my father would always sit with me and we would watch that parade because it remembered him of the time when he was in Paris in 45 at the end of war. And so for me, it was always very touching and very deep of a day to remember and being thankful for those who were willing to give their lives for me and for my children and for my family and my friends to have the freedom that we have today.
Very nicely put. Gwen Session?
Oui, alors, well, for me, I'm thinking about it's a big day, of course, with a heavy heart, honestly, this year, because everything is really different. But Bastille Day, on a personal note, brings me back to my childhood. I would go to spend my summer vacation with my grandmother in a little village in Brittany. And we had fireworks, was already launched from the tower of the local church. and all the birds will be scared. You know, we won't see the birds going in that church or around that church for many, many days. So I have little anecdotes like that. And then we had a big celebration, of course, in that little village, and everything was just friendly. Everything was just simple and open to all. Everything was free. It was really a celebration of the people. And this is what impacted me. Later on in my life, well, I've seen this celebration in bigger cities, in Paris, Brest, and other big cities in France. And here, I'm delighted and always surprised to see the impact that Bastille Day has in the United States, and talking to other persons in other countries as well. We have a lot of celebration around the world, but not all of them are celebrated here in the United States. But Bastille Day, a lot of people know and acknowledge that day for the symbol of it. And I think that's just wonderful.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Gwen. I didn't know where to put the question about the food, but if you could tell, I like to eat. So maybe you could share some of your favorite foods, or what are some traditional cuisines that are typically made or eaten? And it's open for anybody.
Well, I think that as Gwen was mentioning, you know, it's the summer. And in the summer, we are often traveling and with family or friends during vacation. And when it comes to food, for me, it's mostly in the last 20-something years, as I've been living here in the States and going back in the summer and spending maybe more time with friends or close, very close friends to us, and celebrating usually with barbecue. Des grillades, you know, getting all kinds of decent sausages and chipolata and grilling everything outside, and then having a huge lunch from often 1 p.m. all the way until 3 or 4, and big salads and ice cream and cakes and champagne and wine, and just having fun with the people we love. I wanted to add, since we're talking about this, a little bit more about my last 20 years, spending more time with my friends and friends with my American husband and children. And we would spend a lot of time with friends of ours in southern France. I'm from Marseille, so I'm from down there. And our dear friend is a firefighter. And the 14th of July has become a day when we celebrated with them in the parade, when the firefighters in the small village of Châteauneuf-les-Martigues would be the head of the parade. And how we're talking about thankfulness, about people who have fought for us, but also people who are still fighting for us today. Every summer in southern France, like in California or Arizona right now, we have huge fires. And these firefighters are working so hard, putting their own lives at risk to make sure that we remain safe. And so that parade on the 14th of July for me in the last 20-something years has been very, very important. After that, we were invited at the fire station to go for l'apéritif, with all kinds of drinks and petit four and nuts and chips and pizzas, and all the firefighters were recognized by the city mayor, and it was a very special time. Then, of course, this big lunch until 4, and then chilling for a while, and then big fireworks in the evening, and then finishing with a big dance ball in the cities. We live, you know, in Marseille, being close to the water. We would always choose to go to a city that had the fireworks over the water. It's just memorable to me, and my children will always think about this with fond memory. We're a little sad not to be there this year, but it's a beautiful time for family, friends, and rejoicing for our freedom.
Oh, it sounds like a wonderful way to celebrate with so many different kinds of foods and drinks. Gwen, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I agree with Isabel in the sense that there's no really particular dish on that day, and it's certainly not a celebration where we're going to have a fancy dinner because of the idea of the revolution. It's popular, it's people, it's simple, it's open to all, and it's summertime, as we said. So it's really, yes, the idea of grillade or barbecue, the idea of salad, something fresh, but we can share, and everybody will have food, and all these different groups coming together to come as, and they come as one on that day. It's one nation, and that's still a big symbol today, I think. I remember, besides the fireworks, the carnival, also the singing contest. As a little girl, I wanted to participate all the time. But also we had dances, we had a ball, there was music, and each year we had a different type of music, and everybody would meet on the plaza, and several generations will meet to dance, and it's just happiness and celebration of the nation. We're all there, we're all different backgrounds, different status, economic status and all, but on that day we were all together, and that continues 231 years later. And I think that spirit managed to expand beyond France, and this is what is perceived here in the United States as well.
Wow, thank you for that. And I know, Mr. Consul General, you mentioned that there were maybe a handful of prisoners. So why don't you all share some of the facts about some interesting facts? I know that former President Thomas Jefferson was in France at that time, and he had some part in helping with the storming, or in some indirect way. And then it's actually not called Bastille Day around the world. What are some facts that you all could share that maybe the average person may not know?
Well, even if I've been a student in history, I wouldn't risk trying to summarize because first of all, a revolution is always happening, I would say, by chance. Nobody knew that it was not decided that on July 14th, the people of Paris would storm the Bastille. But it's a long process. One key element was the fact that the king, Louis XVI, had dismissed Necker, his prime minister, and Necker was quite appreciated in the population. So then, as said, there was the start of the popular movement leading to this very symbolic prise de la Bastille. Very interestingly, Louis XVI only learned about this the next day in the morning, because he was in Versailles, and there is a famous say when his aide La Rochefoucauld-Liancourt came to tell him, "Sir, the people have torn the Bastille," and Louis XVI asked, "Is it a revolt?" And La Rochefoucauld answers, "No, sire, it's a revolution." So this is very well known. Then what I like to recall is that 1 year later, on the same day, Lafayette organized what is called the Fête de la Fédération, which was where all the provinces of France were represented to this big celebration in Paris. Then, the revolution had also some terrible facts. And the history of the revolution is not just rejoicing all the time. On July the 14th, also the head of the Bastille was beheaded, and so things happened. And so that's why, as said, I would rather recommend the lecture of, for example, the excellent History of the Revolution by Max Gallo, who has really written a lot about this, or François Furet, who is one of our best historians of the revolution. And as I mentioned, then our republic, the French Republic, a very interesting difference for American is that your constitution has never been amended. You still are on the constitution that was adopted at the end of the 18th century. Our constitution has evolved a lot. We are today in the Fifth Republic, and even the text of the Fifth Republic that was adopted in 1958 is still amended. Not every year, of course, but it shows that we think that the basis of our functioning in the society has to be adapted. And this is also always very important in celebrating Bastille Day, because this is the day, as was recalled by Julie or Gwen, it's the day of the people. It's also a time when the official authorities thank the people who make the Republic so lively. And for example, the famous garden party, as it was called, that does not exist anymore, but was a time when the President of the Republic invited people from all walks of life just to tell them you're part of the Republic. And this is something that we are building together every day.
Interesting, very interesting. Any other thoughts on the history of Bastille Day and any interesting facts anyone wants to share?
I would like to share, I heard about the Marquis de La Fayette, and that's an interesting character because of the friendship he had with the United States and the President of Washington, right? Because he served as an aide de camp. And that friendship, I think, is a symbol of the friendship we still have today between the United States and France. An interesting fact, Marquis de La Fayette was a commander of the National Guard of Paris when during the taking of the Bastille, and he was given the key of the prison, of the Bastille prison, before the building was destroyed. So when he had his key, he decided to offer that key to Washington, to President Washington, as a symbol of he was happy with the progress of the revolution, and he sent that key to the United States, to Washington. And that key is now in a glass case in Mount Vernon in a home museum, Washington Home Museum, and you can still see that. And a lot of people don't know this, and I think it's fascinating and such a great symbol of our friendship, the friendship between our two countries.
Wow, that's something definitely to see to those visiting Mount Vernon. I haven't been there, but I look forward to seeing that exhibit as well. Any other thoughts about facts, myths, or any other interesting tidbits you want to share?
Well, there's a thought that came to me when we talk about, Lafayette and Jefferson and Washington. I was watching the show Hamilton with my daughter the other day, and it's very popular. Several years ago, she learned all the songs, and she wanted to see it again. And we watched it together, and as we were watching the American history unfold, of course, France came up. And well, there's the conflict between Hamilton and Jefferson, different points of view of whether they needed to be there and back up France or not. But I think it was interesting, again, to see with my daughter the intricate relationship between our nations. And when we go back to the revolution, we came, and Lafayette was there to help, and Jefferson was there. I mean, I would say the American nobles or the revolutionaries learned a lot from the French philosophers and the Enlightenment movement, and then we came and helped the revolutionaries, and then there was this connection between Jefferson and Lafayette and Washington, and there was this connection, and I think that through history there's always been this connection of I'll back you up, and I'll be there in difficult times. And it definitely happened again, First World War and Second World War. And always to fight for the freedom of the people and the unity and the equality of everyone. And I am, you know, I look at these shows and I think like Hamilton, and I think of the new generation and, or Les Mis, of course, Les Mis. My students learned so much through these, that touched the history of France and how it brings its whole revolution to a different level for them. It just brings them, thanks to Victor Hugo, brings that to life. And it is very, very, very important for me, I think, to remember. And having celebrations like this here in the States with the people, either American or French, all together, always remind me that this is something we need to keep alive today. And through the difficulties and the disagreements, there always been and there will always be. But I believe that as a French American family, we look at this as crucial for the well-being of our countries, but also I think the well-being of this this world. These are friendships that are very important for the freedom of people in general.
I'm glad you mentioned the youth. I wanted to, if it's open to everybody, the impact on the youth. You know, we as Americans, we see a lot of youth involved in protests through the history of France, and maybe some observations about the impact of the youth and how they are consistently involved in speaking out against human rights and other things that are taking place. How did that set the tone for the youth of today?
I would say that, so Bastille Day is really, as was mentioned, a day where we put aside our differences. It's not like May the 1st. May the 1st, you can go in the streets and demonstrate and everybody has his say. Bastille Day has never been a day for expressing, for expressing contest. I think French people like to take on the streets, and the youth, especially students, are very keen on going to the streets. But Bastille Day is a day of harmony of the nation, and I think this is very important. Also because, as I mentioned, Bastille Day is linked to then the Declaration of Human Rights, as it was later defined. But so of course you were referring to demonstration, to the fact that also in the wake of after George Floyd's death, there has been some demonstration in France by some youth people. I think it shows that the main revendication was we are part of the Republic, and we want to be better recognized, and there are very interesting debates about the comparison between the French history of colonialism or of slavery and the American one. I think we need this kind of debate, and so it's but as said, Bastille Day is a day when we put aside those differences and we gather all together. I think, unfortunately, very sad. Let's remember Bastille Day has also been taken as a symbol for terrorists, as you remember in Nice in 2016. And the emotion that was not only in France, but all around the world, exemplified how this Bastille Day is a universal symbol, and that was not by chance that the terrorists decided to attack France on this day.
Thank you. Any other observations about the youth of France and their proactive proactivity when it comes to speaking out and its relation to Bastille Day?
No, maybe just one interesting thing. François d'Alençon, we were talking about the military parade. I think there is a link between the question of why a military parade and how our military has evolved and how the youth is positioning towards this. The military parade was also meant to recall in 1792 Valmy. Valmy was the first big victory of the newly French army that was so it was never meant, the military parade, as a parade to show our force and our dominance on the nation, but more to show how the army is one of the pillars of the Republic. That was also a time when we had a military service, meaning each young each man had to serve in the army for a time. This has changed over the years, and we now have a professional army, not anymore an army where that is constituted by also young enrolled. But we now have, there has been some experimentation of a universal service, meaning the military service was also a good way to integrate everybody, so that whoever you are, you spend 10 or 18 months at a time in the military. And the fact that we've suppressed this military service and that it was not replaced by something universal has led to reflections, and now to the institution of, as said, a universal service, meaning each young person, but François, please correct me because you are more acute with the French actuality, French news, but each young person between the age of 18 and 26 will have to spend 6 months I would say for the common good and for the Republic.
Let me say something about this. There is a very French uniqueness, specificity in this military parade. We are the only Western nation to have a military parade, and usually on the 14th of July, and there are several explanations to that. And one of them is that when they decided in 1880 to have a military parade, I mean, under the Third Republic, some people said it was let's say, a way to recover from the trauma of the big defeat against the Prussian in 1870, the Sedan defeat. And in 1919, after World War I, was a terrible war with so many dead people, we had also this first big parade on the Champs-Élysées, military parade. This is also a way to, to recover from the trauma of this very bloody First World War I, sorry, and this attachment of the French, let's say, of France to this military parade looks pretty odd to me when I look at my European neighbors, Italy, Spain, Germany, even England, who has a good reputation as a military power. They don't have military parades, and I'm sure historians and anthropologists will have many explanations to that.
How about some of the, since Professor Hall and Ms. Sessions are, what about the youth that are in your classes? Do you spend a lot of time talking about this day, and what is their participation, if any, in local festivities?
Well, for high school, unfortunately, this celebration is during summer, means I don't get to celebrate it while I'm in class with students. However, it amazes me to see the great impact that France has still. And my students know, all the students know about the French Revolution because it's part of the program that they have in history and social studies. They do study it at length. So when they are 16, 17, 18, they know about it and they refer to it and we discuss it. And it's a symbol of democracy, and that's what this day is about. For younger students, they hear a little bit French Revolution, they've seen some movies, but when they think about France, and my typical question is, how come did you took a French class? Well, why French for you? And I have all kind of reasons, but I still see for young students who start with me, 14, 15 years old, the prestige, the French prestige. They still know about all the cultures, they know about movies, about something about paintings and art. They are fascinated by the language. They think about perfumes and fashion, and so things like that. Still, students who live here in San Antonio, my schools typically students did not travel that much, but they still have this idea of a type of grandeur of France. And then they know about the revolution, the symbol, as they get deep in their studies. And that impacts me. So as a French living here, I perceive it like I'm an ambassador like all other French person living in other countries. And here, for example, we are ambassador of France, of our country. And it is fascinating to this day to see, for me, the impact that France has, a little country still has in the world. So democracy, the revolution, really impacted in many ways the world. And I want to remember that today.
Thank you, Gwen. Professor Hall, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, the same thing. I mean, with not being in class with them during the summer, there's not a major celebration. I don't think many of them participate in the celebrations with the Alliance Française. But I think that they will more as we work together with the Alliance Française. Our consul pointed out that we had this competition in February. So the students of UTSA, you welcomed the high school students, and Gwen was there with her students. And Gwen was part of the committee that helped put this event together for the first time. And it's, we gathered everybody to celebrate France and French-speaking nations around the world. And but as we get together, we talk more about the Alliance Française, and in San Antonio, Charles Matt has been doing a tremendous work to reactivate and do a lot of activities for the people in San Antonio. And now that we have created this friendship and alliance between several universities and the Alliance Française, now the students are becoming more and more aware of what's happening and what's in existence around them. When it comes, and so I have great hope that they will be more participating, and they go and eat a lot at the French restaurants. Today, Bastille Day, there is both Sweet Paris, La Crêperie, and La Boulangerie that are, that have been getting ready for weeks for celebrating and offering French foods to all who would like to come and rejoice with French food. And I know my students really enjoy these places, and they have been also very active in supporting us with their food in February for this event that we had with the UTSA students and the high school students of two of our districts. And so we have a better connection. I think there is more a stronger connections between all the different groups whether it is the universities, the high schools, the Alliance Française, the restaurants, and even our consulate. And this is something that really brings even France and the unity of the French people and of France here, presently here in the States, in the eyes to our students. And they realize that we are active, that we're here, we're alive, and there is so much going on. You mentioned that, I studied with movies, and I mentioned, American movies or American plays or comedies and that bring the French history to life. But as we study, other movies, the French students learn the history, but still there is something that they know about. They don't know all the details. They often have questions, and we discuss that at all levels, from beginners all the way to very advanced students and through our culture classes. So they are aware, and they're very interested. And they're fascinated with the connection between our nations, and the fact that we really wanted the same thing. We wanted freedom and equality for our people. And going back to the youth, my children are in their early 20s, and this generation is very aware and very keen on equality, very sensitive to, especially my 20-year-old. She's very sensitive to the differences of the people and the importance of respecting the differences, but also understanding that there is this fraternity that is key, and the equality and the respect of other people, whatever their races, whatever the color of their skins, whatever their accents or their origin, or it's something that she's very, very opinionated about. And as she's grown up and I've had her friends in our home, I've seen this more and more in our youth. And so I think that it's not a surprise to see them on the street. It's not a surprise to see them unifying in something that is right, and wanting to make sure that maybe the older ones like us understand and remember that this is something that is very important, and that we need to put our differences aside to remember that we're one, and that we're all human beings, and that we do remember that the fraternity is the key to the happiness of humankind, and the respect of differences. So, but my students and the youth are very, very aware, and they are, they want to make sure that that tomorrow will be better.
You said that very nicely, and kudos to the Consul General's office and his staff, and all of you and the Alliance Française, because as someone who is out in the community, I see that there's a lot of activity. And by doing this program, for example, it shows that there is interest to let more people know not only the history and the culture, but also accepting each other's differences. So very nicely put, Professor. I couldn't agree with you more. As we left with a few more minutes as we're ending this program, I was curious, are there areas in the United States where there is known to have a large French population? I'm imagining the East and, of course, Louisiana, but are there known areas where there are larger populations of French and French Americans?
Well, our biggest communities, I would say, in the administrative sense of the term. So the number of registered citizens, the consulates are in New York and in San Francisco and Los Angeles. You were mentioning Louisiana. Louisiana, we have 1,000 French registered, which is not a big number, but the francophonie is very important there culturally, and so it's spread all over the population. But as Carol remembered, the French-American friendship is very diffused. Meaning, for example, my colleague in the Midwest, it's amazing how many traces of French-American history we have over there. And if you think about the Lafayette Trail, it's a great example also of heritage that is being also very, to which people are very attached. And that's the best ground for fertile ground for our French communities. I think French people in the US, French citizens living in the US, many of them, they just then don't register to the consulate anymore because they are fully integrated and they are in this great environment. And so that's why I would say, I said we have pools of French communities, but we also have many French citizens who now, due to the COVID crisis, they come back to us because they've realized that it's quite useful to have a French passport in those times of crisis. But otherwise, they are just immersed in this very welcoming country.
With the minutes that we have left, maybe everyone could share U.S.-French relations, where they have been, where we are now, and what does it look like in the coming years. I know COVID has impacted travel and tourism, I imagine. Has that been pretty, I'm sure, Mr. Alençon, you've noticed less traffic there of tourists. But what is the overall impression that you have individually seen with French-U.S. relations?
First of all, we miss the American tourists. That's the big message I want to convey. Paris, without the American tourists, is missing a lot of money, of course, but also a lot of friendship, a lot of cultural exchanges. And to tell you the truth, right now, if you go to the Louvre Museum, you will have to wait only 10 minutes to see Mona Lisa instead of maybe of 1 hour or 2. And, you know, and so, yes, in terms of tourism, we dearly miss the American. I hope the situation will be better next year.
Well, I believe there is really a fascination that continues between Americans and French. Sometimes some misunderstanding, some stereotypes still, and disagreements. But there is still that fascination, that friendship that everybody mentioned today. And that continues, will continue. Coronavirus put everything into brackets as a pause, a forced pause, but doesn't stop the friendship. We will see that again. I want to finish on a positive note. There is a blending. We are in a globalization time, and Isabel's children and my children as well are now living here, born in France, living in the United States, and they just represent that second generation, being active, blending in different worlds. And this is where our youth and where the world is going. And there's definitely place for friendship and more travels for American side and the French side. But we will go back to that. For now, we're just keeping the friendship, and Bastille Day is perfect for that, I think. Thank you for inviting me again today. It was a pleasure.
Of course.
Yeah,
Anyone else want to?
Yes, I would like to say, well, thank you, of course, and my children, my family, and my students were very sad when this COVID happened and our trips got canceled. My students were really sad. We had been working for months towards a study abroad, and we were so excited, and all of a sudden everybody was looking at each other thinking, do you think we're not going to go? And I said, you know what, it doesn't look very promising. And then everything got canceled, and they were so disappointed. And we we were just thinking, you know, it's just we'll do it next year. We'll just do it next year, and we'll just keep in contact and with our friends, and we'll be keeping in contact with our friends here, and keeping the friendships alive so that next year we can have even a better experience abroad. And we have good relationships. And I want to say that you were mentioning something about US and France, and through the years, being a French American family, all of my family and friends and others in France have always been the kindest to us, welcoming us wherever we were, helping us in anything we needed. And that has always been very touching to us, whether we were at the bank or at the post office or wherever we needed to be. We were always welcomed and helped, and we have very strong ties, both here and on the other side of the Atlantic, for my generation and my children's generation, and I hope for the next generations to come. There is friendship, there is hope, and there is fraternity and equality, and definitely a great need and desire for more liberty in the future. Thank you again for having me, and happy Bastille Day. Bonne journée. Merci.
Maybe just one word on my side, which is COVID has also given us, I would say, at the level of the embassy, especially the cultural services of the French embassy, has led us to deepen our reflection on how we shall address the new generations. Because we know, and you've said it wonderfully, Isabel and Gwen, we know we can rely on so many French, of so many Americans who love French, who are interested in French culture and the reverse. But we also have to address other categories of the population who have some interest also in France and the Francophonie and all that. And we know we have to adapt some of our actions, some of our tools, because the world is changing very rapidly. We need maybe to have a TikTok account, I don't know, but we also have to address, for example, community colleges more, because we've been very focused on universities. We'll keep being focused on universities, but we also need to address community colleges. So this friendship is constantly renewed, and that's the wonderful thing. And as you said, Bastille Day will be another great occasion. Don't miss the online program tomorrow from 4 o'clock Central Time, and on French Embassy in the US. You'll have a program, a 1-hour program, really showing all over the US what is being done by everybody who loves the French-American friendship. So thank you also for inviting.
Mr. D'Alençon, do you have any final words to share?
Well, as I told you, we are missing the Americans. That's a big miss. And in terms of French-U.S. relations, I think it's, in spite of all the, whoever is in charge in the White House, there is a good relations in a lot of different fields, and it's pretty close. As a journalist, I can tell that this relationship is quite enduring in terms of economy, in terms of security, in terms of culture, everything. So I hope it will last and it will recover from this huge crisis, because here in France, what we are concerned about is also about the economic social crisis which is coming in after the big wave of COVID-19.
And that actually, I lied. I had one more question for the Consul General. As far as Texas is concerned, Texas and France, are there proactive attempts to do business with each other and collaborate? Any kind of cooperation that we should look forward to in the coming year or years?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, France is already very involved in the Texan economy. France is the second largest foreign employer in Texas, with more than 66,000 jobs created by French firms. We have around 250 French companies active in Texas, including major ones in the energy sector, but also in the aeronautics, in the health sector. And I would say, very interestingly, all those companies, even if they have to, for some of them, reach tough decisions, none as considered closing the business here. They are all involved, and they whatever happens, whatever migratory policy there is, they keep the US and Texas for those French companies is a key objective. To show you the importance that France attached to Texas, we had at the beginning of the year the visit of the Deputy Minister for the Economy, Mrs. Agnès Pannier-Runacher, who is now our Minister Delegate for Industry. And it was the first visit at the government level for the past 8 years. And it's really show you the dynamic. We were also planning to have a bigger delegation for South by Southwest at Austin until it was canceled. So I can really assure you that, of course, the month ahead will be tough for everybody, but we already see, we have a trade agency, Business France, and what they tell us is they have a lot of work today because French companies anticipate the way the US and Texas as a major economic power state in the US will rebound very quickly. So we'll be there, we want to be there. And don't forget, France is also a very attractive country. France has reformed a lot in the recent years. We have a high-skilled workforce. We have research and development. So it's really in both ways. And I feel that in both ways, the years ahead will be very beneficial.
Great way to end this program. Mr. Consul General Alexis Andres, a very positive outlook for the US-French relationship on this day of celebration of Bastille Day. And I want to thank the Consul General for taking his time. Always so responsive, and I appreciate your staff. I've interacted with you all before and very pleasant, so I really appreciate that. François de Alençon, foreign correspondent to La Croix, senior foreign correspondent, pardon me. He's also was a former news editor there and has written several books, and those publications are listed in the chat room on the link. Professor Isabel Hall, a professor at UTSA, thank you for joining us, as well as our beloved French teacher, Gwen Sessions, who teaches French for Alliance Française. I want to thank all of you for joining me, all the way from France, much less, and also Houston and Lubbock and San Antonio. We're all over. So we thank you for joining us. I want to thank the University of Incarnate Word for sponsoring this one webinar, and particularly to the board members of Alliance Française in San Antonio. Look at their membership also on the link if you're interested in becoming a member, as well as the membership for the World Affairs Council. I want to thank them for asking me to moderate this wonderful panel. And thank you for watching on this Bastille Day. I will provide a link also for their contact if you have any follow-up questions for the Consul General, for Mr. Alençon, Dr. Hall, and also Gwen Session. You'll be able to ask them offline any questions you might have. And with that being said, happy Bastille Day. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
See.